tonight I watched two films from various past 31 days of Oscar um, days. One was from Best Sound Day, and this film was 1943's This Land Is Mine, which is directed by Jean Renoir. It's very much a propaganda film from the war. Not quite as nuanced, I think, as some of Renoir's other sort of uh, films that critique war and modern life, but it's definitely more nuanced than a lot of the similar propaganda films of its time. It's set in an unspecified occupied country, but it's clearly supposed to be France. The sound design is excellent. There are so many moments where it's stunning use of sound. The film follows a schoolmaster played by Charles Laughton, who lives with his mother and loves cats, who is a little meek, if you will. He has a huge crush on his fellow teacher, played by Maureen O'Hara. His brother works at her brother works at a, rail station? But basically, he's trying to undermine the occupation as best he can. Eventually, because of sort of some backstabbingness, all his plans get found out. I'm sorry, it's really late. Get found out, and things do not go well for everyone involved. Also in here is George Sanders, who is trying to marry Maureen O'Hara's character, but he is very much a collaborator, and it's not great. The main German baddie is played by Walter Slezak, and I just gotta say that when I was in Pordenone last year, I found a actor, fancy card thing that was of Walter Slezak when he was young and like a matinee idol in the silent era or something. And I wish I had bought it or taken a picture or something, because it's hard to believe when you look at like 40s Slezak, you're like, how is this the same person? So basically, when all of this happens and all of the different people who try to fight against occupation and fight against censorship, etc., do so with such strength and integrity, the Laughton character, who at the beginning of the film is very meek and a little afraid of the air raids, etc., comes to realize that he has strength in speaking out, and he has strength in saying what he's afraid to say, and he has strength in his ability to teach children and to inspire these children, and that's how the film ends. There's more to it than that. I don't really want to spoil all of the moments, but again, it's very much a propaganda pro Allies film, but it's very Renoirian, if you will, and Charles Laughton is always good. He's a great actor. The other film I watched won art direction and costume design, and it was a very, very long film. This is 1971's Nicholas and Alexandra. It is 3 hours and 8 minutes. So yes, I watched one film and then I watched another film, but the second film was the length of watching two films. So it's more like I watched three films, except I only watched two. Nicholas and Alexandra is directed by Franklin J. Schaffner. Schaffner. He directed Patton. He wanted Best Director Oscar for Patton while he was in the middle of making this film. He was like the fifth choice for this film. It was produced by Sam Spiegel, who is best known for producing On the Waterfront, The Bridge on the River Kwai, Lawrence of Arabia, etc., etc. He apparently had wanted to work on a Russian Revolution film. He was desperate to work with Lean on Dr. Zhivago, and Lean was like, no, I don't want to work with you anymore. So he started working on this Nicholas and Alexandra film, and eventually wound up needing better source material, so he optioned Robert Massey's book, also named Nicholas and Alexandra, and it was written by James Goldman. Goldman is the brother of William Goldman, and he wrote things like The Lion in Winter. So, Lion in Winter, one of the best films. So, Nicholas and Alexandra is 3 hours and 8 minutes long, and you follow the birth of Alexei, their son, their 5th child. They've had 4 girls at this point, one of whom is Anastasia. Their son has, hemophilia. He's very sickly. Because of that, that's how Rasputin gets into the family and starts, convincing Alexandra that he can do things. All bullshit. We all know this. At the same time, the revolution is stirring, and we get little bits and pieces of Lenin and Stalin and Trotsky. There's a few really great scenes, especially leading up to Bloody Sunday, of the workers in the factories and the horrible conditions that they were in. The film then follows Bloody Sunday, World War I, the Revolution, exile in Siberia, spoiler alert for history, death of the entire family. So, the issue with the film is it is beautifully shot. Cinematography is Freddie Young. He is one of the great cinematographers of this era. Beautiful art direction and costume design. It won the Oscars for that. Some great performances. I think Michael Jayston as Nicholas does a lot of good work. He is my least favorite Jane Eyre a couple years later. This cast includes people like Laurence Olivier, out of nowhere. Vivian Pickles, who I couldn't find her in the credits anywhere. I mean, in the online listed anywhere, but I waited and I watched all the way through the credits because I knew it was Vivian Pickles, and then she showed up in the credits, and it made it worth staying up till midnight to make sure I recognized Vivian Pickles. Michael Redgrave, Jack Hawkins, where was the other one? Ian Holm, a very young Ian Holm, Brian Cox, all kinds of people. Believe, who was it? I just lost him. Tom Baker made his debut, or one of his earliest films, in as Rasputin. He got several nominations for various things. And Janet Suzman was part of the Royal Shakespeare Company, and they let her be in this film, and she got an Oscar nomination for Best Actress. So there's a good soup here. Unfortunately, the pacing is just so bloated. Like, Dr. Zhivago is a long movie, right? But every time I watch that one, I'm just so sucked into everything that's happening because it's so lyrical and poetic, and that's the whole point of following Yuri's story. There's nothing lyrical or poetic about this film. It's very rote, it's very mechanical, and it's very dry. And even though these performances are good, it's hard to invest any emotions in any of the characters, even because I'm not sure who to empathize with. You're seeing both. Mostly you're seeing like 65-70% of the film is the Romanovs, and then 35-25 or so percent of the film is the revolutionaries. And as we all know, like, there were some issues with both. Like, the revolution was not perfect, obviously, led to lots of bad things in the world. The czars were not perfect, but it's so imbalanced in having no opinion on any of it that it doesn't know what it wants to present, and it feels dry. And like, that's not great for storytelling. I know it's history, and you shouldn't pick sides because there's multiple sides in all stories and all with history. But if you're having a narrative fiction or a narrative film that's slightly fictionalized, because once you put something to film and it's not a documentary, and even then, it gets a little hazy, you gotta have some sort of like theme or tone or emotion that is the like through line of your film, and it's not there, other than, I guess, because they're calling it Nicholas and Alexandra, their love for each other. But even that's not a true through line, because it's just, there's too many moving pieces for that even to be the through line. There's just no through line. And I don't know if there was like an 8-hour cut at one point and there was a through line, and then they cut out the parts that made it have a through line. I don't know. I just know that it's now 12:30 and I'm really tired. So this was a Best Picture nominee. I have 50 of the 500 and something left to watch, so I'm almost done with all of the Best Picture nominees. I'm checking the really long ones off the list this year. Eventually I'll watch them all. I don't know. So I think I would recommend this for, I don't know, people who are obsessed with the Russian Revolution, maybe Olivier heads, because it's a fun sort of unexpected, not quite cameo, but really great supporting turn from him. Maybe for people who really love David Lean films, except that David Lean epics all have that passion and that through line, and this is like, you can tell it wanted to be a David Lean film, but then the producer couldn't get David Lean. So that's my thoughts on This Land Is Mine and Nicholas and Alexandra. Two very different, but very, I don't know what, World War I, World War II, Russian Revolution films. Both of them are on Watch TCM right now, but they're about to expire. But I believe they're both on DVD, or at the very least, Nicholas and Alexandra is on DVD. If my like middling review made you want to watch it. So have a good night. So many more movies to watch. It's a 3-day weekend.